The desert keeps its secrets, but it never kept mine. Wind combed through the yucca and carried whispers of the name I no longer used. I rode at dusk, where the sky bruised purple and gold above the mesas, and every hoofbeat felt like a question I couldn't answer. Once, I belonged to a circle of voices around a fire. Now the only circle was the horizon, and it did not speak back. I wore the beadwork I'd stitched the night before my world split. The threads had faded to the color of old embers, and I, too, was the afterglow of a life burned down. People say you get used to loneliness the way you get used to a stone in your boot. Maybe they're right. I just learned to walk with a different kind of limp. I had rules to survive. Saddle tight, water measured, heart closed. Then, on the salt road east of Dry Creek, I met the one thing I could not prepare for. A stranger who didn't stare through me. He tipped his hat like I was a person with a name, like I was someone worth seeing. His eyes held that soft kind of steady you find near rivers at dawn. "Ma'am," he said, voice low as leather. He didn't ask for my story or bargain for my safety. He only offered bread and water and silence we could share without it scraping. I told myself I would take the canteen and ride on. But when his hand brushed mine, simple, unplanned, a touch light as breath, I felt something that frightened me more than thunder or gunfire. It wasn't danger. It was the memory of warmth, waking under my skin. The wind went quiet. For the first time in a long while, I did not want to keep riding. They called the town Willow's End, though there were no willows and nothing had ended. Only paused. A few plank sidewalks, a buckled church bell, and the clap of doors in the afternoon wind. The saloon windows wore dust like lace. I tied my mare at the rail, kept my hat low, and stepped into a room where every voice could turn a person into a story. The stranger was there before me, as if the trail had led to him all along. He stood apart from the card table and the piano's broken smile, hands easy at his sides. Not a lawman, not a gambler. A man who looked like he repaired the things people gave up on. Fences, wagon axles, maybe even hearts. He met my eyes without claiming them. "There's stew," he said, "if you're hungry." I was always hungry and never admitted it. I sat anyway. The first spoonful tasted like something I hadn't felt in years. "Welcome." He told me his name was Cole. I did not give mine. He didn't push. He just left room beside my silence, the way you make space at a fire for someone chilled. Outside, the light softened over the corral. Inside, my rules shifted like sand. I watched his hands, scarred, careful, kind, and wondered how small the world has to become before one touch feels like a map home. He didn't ask who I had been. He asked who I wanted to be next. If you're feeling this story so far, stay with me. Hit subscribe, like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, country and city. Your voice helps this tale find others who need it. Now, if you're ready, ride with me into Chapter 1. The past will try to claim me, and the heart I've guarded will have to choose the road I know or the hand that feels like home. The mornings in Willow's End began in the color of copper, the kind of light that painted the dust and made even broken fences look like gold. I rose before the sun touched the rooftops, because waking early meant I could walk the streets before people started asking questions. Folks out here didn't need much to start weaving a story about you, just the wrong kind of quiet in your voice or a scar in a place they could see. I kept my mare, Sparrow, in the small corral behind the livery. She was the only soul I trusted without reserve. Her coat had dulled with miles, but her eyes were steady, same as the day we first met under the shadow of Black Mesa. I brushed her in silence, feeling the rhythm calm my breath. Some mornings I wondered if she sensed the weight I carried, or if I was just another set of hands to her, no different than the wind through her mane. Cole had offered me a room above the general store. Said it wasn't much, but the roof didn't leak, and the walls were thicker than the canvas of my old tent. I'd taken it, though part of me felt like every nail in that place was holding up a debt I couldn't name. The night I moved in, I sat on the edge of the bed and touched the quilt, worn, patched, but warmer than any blanket I'd had in years. It smelled faintly of cedar and something I couldn't place, something that made me think of campfires after rain. The first days passed without more than a nod between us. He never pried, never pushed, and that made me both grateful and unsettled. People usually wanted to know why I had no tribe, no family, no last name worth speaking. Cole didn't. He'd just ask if I'd eaten, if I'd had enough water, if Sparrow needed feed. One afternoon I found myself lingering in the store longer than I needed. I was there for flour, but I stood near the window, watching the dust swirl in the street. He was stacking sacks of grain, arms corded with quiet strength, and there was no pretense in the way he moved. Just work done, because it needed doing. When he caught me looking, he didn't smile like a man catching someone's gaze. He simply asked, "You still riding out tomorrow?" I hesitated. "Maybe," I said. "Storm's coming," he replied, eyes flicking to the horizon like he could already see the wall of rain. "You'd do better to wait it out here." I should have said no. I should have reminded myself that staying meant more time for people to notice the warrior without a tribe, to wonder why I didn't belong. But instead, I nodded. That night, the storm came in slow, heavy-footed, filling the air with the scent of wet earth before the first drop fell. I sat on the porch, watching the street turn dark under the clouds. Cole joined me without a word, leaning on the rail, his shoulder just close enough that the heat of him cut through the chill. "Where'd you learn to ride like that?" he asked after a while. "Long road," I said. "Long time ago." He didn't press, just took the answer as it was. Lightning split the sky, and for a moment the whole street lit up, the puddles in the dirt, the shuttered windows, the rain carving silver lines in the air. In that flash, I saw his face turn toward me, not studying, not searching, just there, present in a way I hadn't felt in years. When the rain started falling harder, he took off his coat and held it out. "You'll get soaked." "I've been soaked before," I said, but I took it anyway. His hand brushed mine, and again that same unsteady warmth unfurled beneath my skin, like the memory of something I'd never quite had. I told myself it was just the weather, the storm making me softer than I should be. But as we stood there, the world hushed by rain, I realized something I didn't want to admit. I wasn't thinking about leaving anymore. By morning, Willow's End smelled of rain-soaked timber and churned-up earth. The storm had pounded the rooftops through the night, tapping at the windows like it had secrets to tell. I woke with the sound still in my ears, the kind of rhythm that lingers even when silence takes its place. Cole was already up when I came downstairs. He was at the counter, sleeves rolled, brewing coffee in that slow, careful way of his. The steam curled between us, carrying the scent of something warm enough to ease the edge off a cold morning. "Didn't hear you come in last night," he said without looking up. "I was on the porch for a while," I answered, "watching the storm." He nodded, as if that explained everything. "It's a good thing you stayed. The road east washed out. Would have been a hard ride." I didn't tell him I'd already known that the moment I'd decided not to go. Sometimes you stay in a place for reasons that don't fit neatly into the weather. Over breakfast, he asked if I'd help patch the roof on the shed out back. It wasn't a request so much as an invitation, one that felt less about the roof and more about the quiet that came from working side by side. So I followed him into the yard, boots sinking into the damp earth. The air was heavy with the scent of sage and wet dust. We worked in easy rhythm. He steadied the boards while I hammered, both of us silent except for the occasional call for nails or tools. At one point, I caught him watching me, his expression unreadable. "What?" I asked, setting down the hammer. "You handle yourself well," he said. "Not just with the tools, with people." I almost laughed at that. "You think so?" "I know so." The way he said it left no space for doubt, and for a moment I felt the weight of all the times I'd been told the opposite, that I didn't belong, that I was too much of one thing and not enough of another. His words settled somewhere deep, where the hurt usually hid. By midday, the clouds broke open to a pale blue sky. Cole brought out 2 tin cups of water, handing me one with that same quiet care he gave to everything. Our fingers brushed again, and it was ridiculous how such a small touch could feel like a door cracking open. Later, as we stored the tools, he asked, "You planning to keep moving?" "I don't know yet," I said. "Well, if you do, there's work here, and no one asking questions you don't want to answer." It was the kindest offer I'd had in years, and it scared me more than threats ever did. Offers like that made you wonder what you might lose if you accepted. That night, the saloon had music for the first time since I'd arrived. A fiddle, off-key but alive, spilling out into the street. Cole was there, leaning on the bar, talking with the barkeep. When he saw me, he tipped his hat in that slow, deliberate way that made me feel seen. I sat at a corner table, nursing a drink, letting the sound wrap around me. A few townsfolk danced, boots scuffing the plank floor. Cole came over, pulled out the chair opposite mine. "Dance?" he asked. "I don't." "Sure you do," he said, standing before I could protest. I should have refused. Instead, I let him lead me into the open space. His hand found mine, the other resting lightly at my waist. The room blurred into the low hum of voices, the shuffle of boots, the scent of tobacco and wood smoke. His eyes stayed on mine, steady as a horizon. For the length of that song, I wasn't the warrior without a tribe. I was just a woman, moving to a rhythm that had nothing to do with survival and everything to do with living. When the music ended, he didn't let go right away, and I didn't step back. In the weeks after the storm, Willow's End settled into the kind of quiet that makes you think a place might keep you. Morning meant coffee and the creak of the store's front steps. Noon meant the slow trade of flour for coin, rope for promises. Evenings meant the fiddle when the player wasn't drunk, and if he was, it meant the wind. I told myself I was only staying until the roads dried, until Sparrow's shoes were reset, until the ache in my chest remembered how to be stone again. I was sorting sacks of beans in the back room when the bell over the door chimed, 2 footfalls, sure and soft. Cole said, "Afternoon," and the stranger answered in a voice that wasn't strange at all. It was a voice with river in it, with winter pines and the hush of snow on cedar boughs. It reached through the thin wall and found me before my breath could hide. "Is she here?" he asked. My hands stilled in the burlap. There are questions that do not need names to be true. Cole hesitated, not because he was afraid, but because he knew that sometimes the safest answer is time. I stepped into the doorway. The man turned. His hair was bound with a strip of red cloth, his jacket stitched with mended care, his boots dusted the same color as the road that used to lead me home. He wore a necklace of bone and river stone, and at its center hung a bead the color of dusk, the twin of the one sewn inside my sleeve. "Nikisi," he said. The room narrowed to the length of his gaze. I hadn't heard the name spoken in 2 winters. It lifted every hair on my arms. That name meant fire circles and hunt songs, meant the first knife my mother placed in my palm, meant the oath I broke. It meant I couldn't pretend to be no one. "Hello, Tahoma," I managed. Cole didn't move. He didn't look at me like he had found a secret or a lie. He looked at the man who knew a name he had never asked for and kept his hands easy at his sides, but near. Tahoma inclined his head to Cole. "I came a long way," he said, not unkindly. "I would drink if you will offer." Cole poured water. Tahoma drank like a man who knew its price. "Why now?" I asked. "Because the boy is missing," he said. The word boy cut cleaner than a blade. "Whose?" "Little Kiona's son," he answered. "The child of your friend, caught in the flash flood at Copper Wash. We found no small footprints after the water receded. We found horse sign, 2 riders." I felt the floor shift under me, though it did not move. I remembered Kiona's laugh, the way she would tilt her head when she listened like the world's story was a thread she could count. I remembered the day she tied the bead in my sleeve and said, "Keep something bright close to your skin when the dark is hungry." I had not kept close. I had fed the dark with silence. "What do you need me for?" My voice came out sharper than I meant. Shame does that. You read sign better than any of us, Tahoma said. You cut wind from dust and find a hoof's new scar. You smell iron where others smell rain, and the man who took the boy, if it is the man we think, owes you a debt. There it was, the other half of the truth. The name I left with wasn't the only one I buried. Cole set the canteen down. If there are riders taking children, he said, his voice even, this town needs to know. This town, Tahoma said, turning his steady look on Cole, would turn its back on the warrior without a tribe if it knew what followed her. Try me, Cole said softly. Tahoma considered him, then returned to me. You left to spare us another war. I know this. Others forget kindness when it comes wrapped in absence, but I do not forget how you chose to be the wall that took the blow. He paused. Nikisi, we need your eyes. We need your feet on the trail. 3 days, perhaps 4. I brought a mare for you that knows my whistle. I have a horse, I said too quickly. He glanced at Sparrow through the window. You always did choose the ones who outlasted storms. We stood with a thin board counter between us and years that had been thicker. I could feel Cole watching the space where my next breath would go. What happens if I go back? I asked. You help us bring the boy home, Tahoma said. And you come away before the ones who would call you Oathbreaker find their courage. And if I don't, I asked. He didn't let the answer be a threat. Then we follow sign without your eyes, and the boy's mother buries heir. The bell over the door chimed again, and a burst of laughter from the street snuck in, careless and bright. It felt obscene, like a tune played over a prayer. Let me saddle Sparrow, I said. Cole stepped outside with me, giving Tahoma the room and the shade and the water that a long road earns. The sun had leaned west, turning every nail-head in the porch rail into a star. Sparrow nickered like she knew that the easy hour was over. How far? Cole asked. Copper Wash is 2 days if the road holds, I said, less if the wind is with us. Do you have to go alone? He asked. Something in me wanted to say yes, because that was the shape my life understood. But I could not send him that answer and still be honest. No, I said. But if you come into my past, not just my trail. I figured, he said, a corner of his mouth softening. I don't scare easy. This isn't saloon trouble, I said. It's the kind that remembers your father's name and your grandfather's, the kind that digs where blood is buried. He nodded. Then I'll bring a shovel. It was a simple joke. It unhooked something I didn't know was holding my ribs too tight. I laughed once, quiet, and felt the world tilt back toward balance. We packed light, rope, water, jerky, a blanket. I slid my hand inside my sleeve and felt the bead there, the twin of Tahoma's, the small dusk pressed against my wrist. I'd kept it hidden like a sin. Now it felt like a compass. Before we mounted, Cole touched my arm, not to stop me, to anchor me where he was. You don't have to tell me what Nikisi means, he said. You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready to. But I want you to know something I am ready to say. I waited. The street lifted a thin drift of dust, spun it, let it fall. I see you, he said, with the name I met and the one you buried. Both. The words landed where Tahoma's had, deep, where the hurt hid. But they did a different thing. They made room. We rode out in the slant light of late afternoon, Tahoma a length ahead, reading the road like a book he had written. The land opened its palm to us, sage and basalt, the far teeth of the range, a hawk drawing arrows on the sky. We kept a steady pace until the light went copper again and the air cooled enough to taste water long before you found it. We camped in a dry arroyo, the walls cupping our small fire. Tahoma boiled coffee in a blackened pot and sat where his shadow touched mine. He did not look at me when he spoke, which is how you talk about wounds in a place that honors them. You were right to leave, he said, as if continuing a conversation we had not been allowed to have. If you had stayed, Blood River would have had his war, and our children would have learned new graves. You took the anger and walked away with it. But anger is not a horse that tires. It follows. I thought if I became no one, it would die, I said. Names are not what anger follows, he said. It follows breath. And you kept breathing. Silence stretched, but it wasn't empty. The fire sighed and sent up a thread of spark. Cole turned a stick in the coals, then said, "Careful as a man placing a plank over a creek. Who is Blood River?" "The man who took what was not owed and said it was debt," Tahoma said. "A trader who wears law like a coat when it suits him, a thief when it doesn't. He lost 3 horses to us fair in a game he insisted on. He called it cheating when he sobered. He looked at me. Darant said let him keep his horses and his pride. He spat and turned to leave. Then he took Kiona's brother with him. Collateral, he said. We went after him. You went first. I remembered the night bright as noon. My knife at Blood River's throat. His breath sour with whiskey. The tremor in my hand that was not fear, but fury hardened too long. I remembered the boy shaking loose behind me, running for camp. I remembered the elder's voice, a hinge in the dark. Not tonight. Let the debt die. Choose the living. I had chosen the living. And then I had left because what lived inside me wanted the other thing too much. Tahoma set his cup down. Blood River rides with a new partner now, a thin man with a scar where his smile should be. They take children because men who won't trade horses will trade their hearts. His voice dropped. We think they took Kiona's boy across the wash toward the canyons. We found a piece of red cloth caught on a creosote thorn. He looked at my sleeve. Not ours. Cole's jaw tightened, the only sign of the heat that moved under his calm. We'll find them, he said, like a promise he meant to owe himself to. I lay down with the blanket over my shoulder and the bead against my wrist. The stars were bright enough to sting. Sleep came like a door on slow hinges. Just before it closed, I heard Tahoma speak into the dark. Nikisi, he said softly, as if to remind me of the shape of my own breath. The boy's mother asked me to tell you something. I waited. She said, if you find him, bring him home. If you cannot bring him home, bring her the truth. And if the truth is heavy, let us carry it with you. The door of sleep swung shut. In the last sliver of waking, with Sparrow's warmth a heartbeat away and Cole's outline solid against the stars, I understood the choice forming ahead like a fork in the trail. The love that asked nothing of my past but honesty, and the loyalty that asked everything of my present but fear. I didn't know yet how to braid them. In the morning we would try. By the time we reached the mouth of the canyon, the air had changed. It was cooler, touched with the damp shadow of stone, but it also carried something sharper, the metallic tang of iron, faint yet certain. Cole noticed it too. I saw it in the way his jaw set. Tahoma dismounted, crouching low, his palm flat against the dirt. He traced a finger over a faint groove, then looked up at me. 2 horses, he said. One heavier, likely carrying more than a man. The walls around us narrowed, red and gold striations rising high enough to swallow sound. Every hoofstep echoed twice, once for the living, once for the ghosts. I could feel the canyon breathing, drawing us in, and with each breath the past pressed closer to my skin. We followed the tracks deeper until the ground sloped toward a dry stream bed. There, wedged between 2 rocks, was a scrap of cloth. I knew the weave before I touched it. Thin, worn cotton dyed with crushed berries. Kiona had dressed her boy in shirts like this, the fabric soft from years of washing. My throat tightened. Cole stepped closer, his hand brushing mine as I held the cloth. Still warm from the sun, he said quietly. They're not far. Tahoma's gaze flicked to the canyon ahead, where the walls curved and hid whatever lay beyond. If we press now, we could catch them before nightfall, he said. But I hesitated. The canyon's shape played tricks with light, and I'd hunted enough in places like this to know what waited in blind bends, ambushes, traps, the sudden shatter of safety. If we rush, we could walk right into them, I said. Cole studied me, then nodded once. We take the high path. The climb was steep, but from the ridge we could see the narrow floor below. And there they were, 2 riders moving slow, as if they believed the canyon belonged to them. One was the thick-shouldered bulk of Blood River, unmistakable even at distance. The other, thinner, face hidden under a wide brim, a rifle slung across his back. Between them, tied to the heavier horse, a small figure shifted once, a jerky movement that made my heart hammer. "He's alive," Tahoma whispered. I felt the bead in my sleeve press against my wrist like it wanted to anchor me. The sight of Blood River lit every coal I had buried, the ones I'd walked away from to keep my hands clean. And yet here he was, dirtying the world again. Cole's voice was low, steady. "We can intercept them at the split in the canyon, half a mile ahead. If we get there first, we control the ground." Tahoma glanced at me. "Your call, Nikisi." For a moment, I saw two trails in my mind, one where we walked into their jaws, one where we turned the jaws into a cage. The choice was heavy, but my voice was steady. "We take the split," I said, "and this time, Blood River doesn't walk away." We rode hard, the canyon walls racing past like sentinels. Every turn, every dip in the ground I marked in my mind, knowing we'd only have one chance to set the ground in our favor. The split came into view as a narrow fork, left path climbing into a rocky shelf, right path diving into shadow. The air there was still, like it had been holding its breath for years. Cole dismounted first, scanning the ground. "We block the right," he said. "Force them up the shelf where they can't charge." "Laddie." Tahoma and I moved quick. We rolled boulders into place, wedged brush between them, enough to make the path look natural until it wasn't. My fingers worked without thought, the old skills waking like they'd been waiting for this moment. When we heard the echo of hooves, we took our positions, Tahoma behind a cluster of rocks, Cole to my left. I crouched low, heart steady now, eyes on the bend where the riders would appear. They came slow, unaware. The boy slumped but upright on the tethered horse. Blood River's laugh bounced off the stone, the same deep, ugly sound I remembered. The thin man's eyes were always moving, scanning for danger, but his gaze stayed low. He didn't look up to the shelf where we waited. When they reached the blockage, the horses balked. Blood River cursed, raining hard. That was the moment. Tahoma's whistle split the air, sharp and short. Sparrow surged forward, cutting them off from behind. Cole slid down the shelf, rifle in hand but pointed low. "Off the horse," I said, my voice carrying the weight of every mile since the last time we stood this close. Blood River's eyes narrowed. "Nikisi," he said, like a word he'd been saving for a wound. "Didn't think you had the stomach to come back?" "I didn't," I said, stepping closer, "until you took what wasn't yours. Again." His hand twitched toward his belt, but Cole's rifle lifted an inch. The thin man froze, reading the room faster than his partner. The boy's eyes found mine, wide but bright. "Your mama's waiting," I told him. His small hands tightened on the saddle horn, hope flickering like firelight. Blood River sneered. "You going to kill me, girl?" I felt the bead in my sleeve, its edge sharp against my skin. "No," I said. "I'm going to send you walking, without your pride or your prize." We cut the boy loose. Cole swung him up into his own saddle. Blood River cursed again, but when Tahoma stepped forward, blade in hand, the sound died in his throat. He knew the choice he had. He took it. We rode out of the split with the boy safe between us. The canyon exhaled, and so did I. This time I wasn't leaving to run. I was riding towards something worth staying for. We reached Willow's End as the sun bled out behind the hills, painting the sky in fire and ash. The town was quiet, as if holding itself still for the moment it would see the boy again. When Kiona ran from the doorway of the saloon, her cry split the air, half sob, half prayer. She pulled her son from Cole's arms and held him like she would never let go. Tahoma clasped my shoulder, the weight of his grip saying more than words could. "You've done enough to quiet the dark for a while," he murmured. Then he turned, leading his horse into the fading light. Cole stood beside me, hat in hand. The wind carried the smell of rain from somewhere far off. "You could keep riding," he said, "or you could stay." I looked down the road that had always meant escape, and saw nothing there worth more than the warmth standing next to me. My tribe might never take me back, but maybe home was something you built from the ground you stood on, and the hands willing to build it with you. I'll stay, I said, and for the first time in years, I meant it. Pergunta ao chat GPT.